Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of the StoryNest English podcast. I'm really happy you're here today. Whether you're listening while driving to work, walking in the park, relaxing at home, or enjoying a cup of coffee, thank you for choosing to spend these next few minutes with me. If you're learning English, you've probably asked yourself this question at least once. Why am I still not fluent? Maybe you've been studying English for months, maybe even for years. You've watched YouTube videos, you've downloaded language apps, you've memorized hundreds of vocabulary words, you've studied grammar, you've completed online courses, and yet, when it's time to speak, your mind suddenly goes blank. You know the words, you know the grammar, but somehow you can't use them naturally. If this sounds familiar, don't worry, you're definitely not alone. In fact, millions of English learners around the world feel exactly the same way. And today, I want to tell you something that might surprise you. The problem isn't that you're not smart enough. The problem isn't that you're too old. And the problem isn't that English is impossible. Most of the time, the real problem is much simpler. You're learning English, but you're learning it in a way that doesn't match how your brain naturally learns languages. Today, we are going to explore why that happens. We'll talk about the biggest mistakes many learners make. We'll discover what actually works. And by the end of this episode, I hope you'll feel more confident and more excited about your English journey. So, let's begin. When people start learning English, they usually have one goal. I want to speak fluently. It sounds simple, but what does fluently actually mean? Many people think fluency means speaking perfectly. No mistakes, perfect pronunciation, perfect grammar, the perfect vocabulary for every situation. But that's not true. Think about children. When children learn their first language, do they speak perfectly? Of course not. They make mistakes every single day. Sometimes they use the wrong words. Sometimes they pronounce words incorrectly. Sometimes they create funny sentences. But they keep talking, they keep listening, they keep learning. Little by little, they become fluent, not because they're perfect, but because they're not afraid to communicate. This is one of the biggest lessons every English learner should remember. Fluency is not perfection. Fluency is communication. If people understand you, you're already succeeding. Now, let me ask you a question. Have you ever spent an hour memorizing vocabulary only to forget most of the words a week later? If your answer is yes, you're completely normal. Our brains are amazing, but they're also very practical. Your brain doesn't like storing information that it doesn't use. Imagine learning the word umbrella. You write it 10 times, you memorize the spelling, you memorize the meaning, then you never hear it again. You never read it. You never say it. What happens? Your brain quietly decides, I don't think this information is important, and little by little, you forget it. Now, imagine something different. Instead of memorizing only the word, you hear a story. The weather suddenly changed. Tom opened his backpack and took out an umbrella. His friend smiled and said, "Good thing you brought it." Now your brain has a picture, a situation, a conversation, an emotion. Suddenly, the word becomes much easier to remember. That's exactly why stories are so powerful. They give words a home. Instead of floating alone, words become part of a meaningful experience, and our brains love meaningful experiences. Think about your favorite movie. Can you remember some of the conversations? Probably yes. Can you remember what the characters looked like? Probably. Can you remember how certain scenes made you feel? Absolutely. Why? Because stories activate your memory in a completely different way. This is why throughout this podcast, you'll notice that I often use stories, examples, and real-life situations. Because I don't just want you to learn English, I want you to remember it. And remembering is the first step towards speaking naturally.
Now, let's talk about something that almost every English learner experiences. Imagine this. You open your favorite language app. You study for 20 minutes. You learn 15 new words. You feel productive. You close the app and continue your day. The next morning, you can only remember 3 of those words. A week later, maybe just 1. Sound familiar? Don't worry. This doesn't mean you have a bad memory. It doesn't mean you're a slow learner. It simply means your brain is working exactly the way it was designed to work. Your brain doesn't ask, "Did you study this?" Instead, it asks, "Do you actually use this?" There is a huge difference. Think about your own language. You probably don't remember every grammar lesson from school, but you speak your language every day. You hear it, you read it, you use it without thinking. That's why it feels natural. English works the same way. The more you use it in meaningful situations, the more natural it becomes. So, what is the biggest mistake most learners make? They spend almost all of their time studying English instead of living with English. There is an important difference. Studying English often means opening a textbook, reading grammar rules, memorizing vocabulary lists, doing exercises. These activities are useful, but they are only one part of the journey. Living with English is something different. It means listening to English while cooking dinner, watching short videos in English, reading simple stories before bed, thinking about your day in English, talking to yourself while walking, changing your phone language, following English creators on social media. Little by little, English becomes part of your everyday life, and that's when real progress begins. Let me tell you a short story. Meet David. David wanted to improve his English. Every Monday, he studied grammar for 2 hours. Every Wednesday, he memorized vocabulary. Every Friday, he took online quizzes. After 6 months, his test scores were excellent, but when he met an English speaker, he froze. His heart started beating faster. His mind became completely empty. He couldn't say even simple sentences. David thought, maybe I'm just bad at languages, but that wasn't true. David had knowledge. What he didn't have was experience. So he changed his routine. Instead of spending 2 hours memorizing vocabulary, he spent 30 minutes listening to English podcasts. He read short stories. He repeated sentences aloud. He described the things around him in English. He stopped worrying about mistakes. 3 months later, something amazing happened. He wasn't speaking perfect English, but he was speaking. Conversations became easier. His confidence grew. People understood him, and that's what really matters. Here's something I want you to remember. Learning happens when you're comfortable. Growth happens when you're slightly uncomfortable. Think about going to the gym. If you always lift the lightest weights, your muscles never grow. If every English activity feels easy, you're probably not challenging yourself enough. But if everything feels impossible, you'll become frustrated and quit. The secret is finding the middle. Choose materials that are just a little above your current level. If you understand about 80%, you're in the perfect learning zone. You'll learn new words naturally. You'll notice grammar patterns, and you'll keep feeling motivated because you're making progress. Now let's talk about something that many learners are afraid of: making mistakes. Raise your hand. Well, maybe not literally, but think about it. How many times have you stayed silent because you were afraid of saying something wrong? Maybe someone would laugh, maybe your pronunciation wasn't perfect, maybe your grammar wasn't correct, so you said nothing. The problem is, silence never improves your English. Speaking does. Every mistake is information. Every conversation teaches your brain something new. Every sentence makes you a little stronger. Think about babies learning to walk. Do they fall? Of course, many times. Imagine if a baby said, "I fell once. Walking isn't for me." It sounds funny, but many adults do exactly that with English. They make one mistake, then they become embarrassed, then they stop trying. Real progress doesn't come from avoiding mistakes. It comes from learning through them. So the next time you make a mistake, smile, correct yourself, and keep going, because every mistake means you're practicing, and practice is how fluency is built.
So far, we've talked about why many English learners feel stuck. We've learned that fluency is not about being perfect.
We've seen why memorizing words isn't enough, and we've discovered that making mistakes is actually part of learning. Now comes the most important question. What should you do instead? I'd like to share 5 simple habits that can completely change the way you learn English. These habits don't require expensive courses. They don't require special talent. They only require consistency. Let's start with the first one. Habit number 1, listen every day. If you want to speak English, you first need to hear English. Think about how children learn. Before they ever say their first word, they've already spent months listening. They hear conversations. They hear stories. They hear the same words again and again. Their brains slowly begin to recognize patterns. The same thing happens when you're learning English. You don't have to understand every single word. In fact, you shouldn't expect to. Instead, focus on understanding the main idea. Little by little, your ears become familiar with the sounds of English. Words that once sounded strange begin to feel normal. That's why listening is one of the most powerful habits you can build. Even 15 or 20 minutes a day can make a big difference over time. Habit number 2, read things you enjoy. Many learners believe they should read difficult books. I don't agree. If reading feels like a struggle every minute, you'll probably stop. Instead, read stories, read simple articles, read dialogues, read about topics you genuinely enjoy. Do you like travel? Read travel blogs. Do you enjoy cooking? Read easy recipes in English. Do you love technology? Follow technology news written in simple English. When you're interested in the topic, your brain pays attention, and when your brain pays attention, learning becomes much easier. Habit number 3, speak even when you're alone. This surprises many people. You don't always need a conversation partner. You can practice speaking almost anywhere. Describe what you're doing. I'm making coffee. The weather is nice today. I need to answer some emails. It may feel a little strange at first. That's completely normal. But every sentence you speak trains your brain to think faster in English. You don't need perfect grammar. You just need practice. The more you speak, the easier speaking becomes. Habit number 4, learn phrases, not just words. Imagine someone teaches you the word decision. That's useful, but what if you also learn these expressions? Make a decision. That's a difficult decision. I've already made my decision. Now you're learning English the way native speakers actually use it. Languages are built from patterns. The more patterns you know, the more naturally you'll speak. So whenever you learn a new word, ask yourself, how is this word usually used in a sentence? That simple question can dramatically improve your English. Habit number 5, be patient with yourself. This may be the hardest habit of all. We live in a world where everyone wants quick results. People expect to become fluent in 30 days, or 60 days, or after watching 10 videos. But language learning doesn't work that way. Think of it like planting a tree. You don't plant a seed today and expect a huge tree tomorrow. First, the roots grow. Even though you can't see them, important progress is happening underground. Learning English is very similar. Sometimes you feel like nothing is changing, but your brain is constantly building connections. One day, you'll suddenly realize something amazing. You'll understand a movie without subtitles. You'll remember a word instantly. You'll answer a question without translating in your head. Those moments don't happen by accident. They happen because of all the small efforts you've made over weeks and months. So don't underestimate small progress. Small progress repeated every day creates big results. I'd like to ask you something. Imagine 2 learners. The first studies English for 4 hours every Saturday. The second studies for 20 minutes every single day. Who do you think will improve faster? Most language teachers would choose the second learner. Why? Because consistency is more powerful than intensity. Your brain learns better through frequent exposure. 20 minutes every day is often more effective than one long study session once a week. Remember this, it's better to study a little every day than a lot once in a while. Now, before we finish today's episode, I want to leave you with a small challenge. Starting today, try to spend just 20 minutes with English every day. Not studying, living with English. Listen to a short podcast, read one page of a story, learn one useful phrase, speak to yourself for 5 minutes. Don't worry about being perfect, just show up every day. You might be surprised by how much you improve after only a few weeks.
Before we finish today's episode, I'd like you to pause for just a moment and think about your own English journey. When did you start learning English? Maybe it was at school. Maybe you started because of your job. Maybe you wanted to travel. Or maybe you simply dreamed of understanding movies, books, and people from around the world. Whatever your reason is, I want you to remember something important. Every person who speaks English fluently today was once a beginner. Every confident speaker once struggled to understand simple conversations. Every person who now speaks naturally once made mistakes. The difference is that they didn't stop. They kept listening. They kept reading. They kept speaking. And little by little, English became a natural part of their lives. The same can happen to you. Let's quickly remember the main ideas from today's episode. First, fluency is not the same as perfection. You don't need perfect grammar or a perfect accent to communicate successfully. Second, memorizing words without context isn't enough. Your brain remembers language much better when it appears in stories, conversations, and real situations. Third, don't just study English, live with English. Listen while you're cooking, read while you're relaxing, think in English during the day. Make English part of your daily routine. Fourth, don't be afraid of mistakes. Every mistake teaches you something. Every conversation makes you stronger. Every sentence you speak builds your confidence. And finally, be patient. Language learning is not a race, it's a journey. Some days you'll feel like you're improving quickly. Other days you'll feel stuck. That's completely normal. Keep going anyway. I'd like to share one final thought before we say goodbye. Imagine you're climbing a mountain. When you're looking at the top, it seems very far away. Sometimes you feel tired. Sometimes you wonder if you'll ever get there. But every single step matters, even the small ones. You don't reach the top with one giant jump. You reach it one step at a time. Learning English works exactly the same way. Every podcast you listen to, every page you read, every new phrase you learn, every sentence you speak, every small effort brings you closer to your goal. So don't focus only on how far you still have to go. Take a moment to appreciate how far you've already come. Maybe 6 months ago you couldn't understand this podcast. Today you're listening until the end. That's progress. Be proud of it. Now, I'd like to give you a simple challenge before our next episode. For the next 7 days, spend at least 20 minutes with English every day. Listen to something interesting, read a short story, learn one useful expression, speak out loud for a few minutes. Don't worry about perfection, just build the habit. At the end of the week, ask yourself one question. Do I feel a little more comfortable with English than I did 7 days ago? If the answer is yes, you're moving in the right direction. Before we finish, I'd love to hear from you. What is the biggest challenge you're facing in learning English? Is it speaking, listening, vocabulary, pronunciation, or maybe confidence? Share your answer in the comments. I'd really enjoy reading your experiences, and your answer might even inspire the topic of a future episode. In our next episode, we're going to explore a fascinating question. Can adults learn English the same way children learn their first language? We'll discover what science says, which learning methods actually work, and how you can use them to improve your English faster and more naturally. I think you're going to enjoy that conversation. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I truly appreciate every minute you've shared today. If you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful, don't forget to follow the podcast so you won't miss future episodes. And if you know someone who's also learning English, share this episode with them. You never know, it might be exactly the encouragement they need today. Until next time, keep listening, keep learning, keep believing in yourself. And remember, every day you spend with English is another step toward fluency. Take care, and I'll see you in the next episode. Goodbye.